The golden chandelier cast warm light across the marble floors of Le Chateau, the most expensive restaurant in Manhattan. Crystal glasses clinked softly as wealthy diners enjoyed their $1,000 meals. But tonight, the peaceful atmosphere was about to be shattered by a billionaire's baby who cried a lot at the restaurant, and what a waitress's black daughter did next would leave everyone speechless. Marcus Sterling sat at table 12, his custom-made suit worth more than most people's cars. His wife Elena held their 6-month-old son David, who had been crying nonstop for 20 minutes. The baby's screams echoed to the fancy dining room, making other customers look around with annoyed faces. Marcus didn't care about the stares. He owned 3 hotels, 2 airlines, and had enough money to buy this entire restaurant if he wanted to. He snapped his fingers loudly, calling for service like he was summoning a dog. "Where's our waitress?" Marcus demanded, his voice cold and impatient. "This is unacceptable. We're paying premium prices, and the service is terrible." Elena bounced baby David gently, but nothing worked. The infant's face was red from crying, and his tiny fists waved in the air. Other diners whispered among themselves, some asking to be moved to different tables. The manager, Mr. Peterson, hurried over with a fake smile, trying to calm the situation. But Marcus wasn't interested in apologies. He wanted results, and he wanted them now. From across the dining room, Maria Santos watched the scene unfold. She was a single mother who worked double shifts just to pay rent for her tiny apartment. Her black uniform was perfectly pressed, and her name tag read Maria Server. She had been working at Le Chateau for 3 years, dealing with rude customers every day. But something about the crying baby touched her heart. As a mother herself, she knew that babies don't cry without reason. They cry when they're hungry, tired, scared, or sick. And this little one seemed truly distressed. Maria approached the table carefully, her notepad ready. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Sterling. I apologize for any inconvenience. Is there anything I can do to help?" Marcus looked at her with disgust, his eyes scanning her appearance from head to toe. "Finally," he said rudely, "we've been waiting forever. This baby won't stop crying, and it's ruining our dinner. Do something about it, or we're leaving and never coming back." His words were sharp and cruel, meant to make Maria feel small and worthless. But Maria had dealt with men like Marcus before, rich people who thought money made them better than everyone else. She smiled politely and said, "Of course, sir. Let me see what I can do." She looked at baby David, who was still crying loudly. His face was not just red from screaming. There was something else. Maria had raised her own daughter alone and had learned to read baby signals. This wasn't normal crying. This was a baby in real distress. "Ma'am," Maria said gently to Elena, "may I ask if David's been eating normally today?" Elena looked surprised that a waitress would know her baby's name or show genuine concern. "Well, he's been fussy since this morning. He barely ate anything, and he feels a little warm." Marcus rolled his eyes. "She's just a waitress," he told his wife. "What could she possibly know about babies? We need a doctor, not restaurant staff giving medical advice." Maria ignored Marcus's insult and focused on the baby. Something was very wrong. David's crying had a desperate quality that reminded her of the night her own daughter had been sick with a high fever. "Mrs. Sterling, I don't want to alarm you, but I think your baby might need medical attention. His cry sounds different, and you mentioned he feels warm. That could be a sign of fever or infection." Marcus exploded with anger. "How dare you?" he shouted, loud enough for the entire restaurant to hear. "You're just a waitress, a nobody who serves food for a living. You have no right to give medical advice to people like us. We have the best pediatrician in New York. We don't need help from someone like you." His words were filled with racism and classism, designed to humiliate Maria in front of everyone. But Maria didn't back down. She had worked too hard and sacrificed too much to let a rich bully intimidate her. "Sir, I understand you're upset, but I'm only trying to help. Sometimes a mother's instincts can—" Marcus cut her off viciously. "Mother's instincts? You're a waitress in a cheap uniform. What kind of mother works in a restaurant instead of taking care of her own children? I bet you don't even know who your baby's father is." The restaurant fell silent. Everyone stared at the scene, some recording with their phones. Maria's hands trembled slightly, but not from fear, from controlled anger. This man had just insulted not only her profession, but also her daughter and her character. But she had something Marcus didn't know about, something that would turn this entire situation upside down. "Mr. Sterling," Maria said calmly, "I need to make a phone call. I'll be right back." She walked to the kitchen, pulled out her cell phone, and dialed a number. "Hi, baby. It's Mom. I need you to come to the restaurant right away. There's a medical emergency, and I think you can help." The person on the other end agreed immediately. Maria returned to table 12, where Marcus was still complaining loudly about the incompetent staff. 15 minutes later, a young woman in scrubs walked through the restaurant's front door. She was beautiful, confident, and black, clearly Maria's daughter. But what shocked everyone was the ID badge hanging from her neck. Dr. Sarah Santos, Chief of Pediatrics, Mount Sinai Hospital, the same hospital where Marcus and Elena took their son for checkups. Dr. Sarah Santos was only 28 years old, but she was already one of the most respected pediatricians in New York City. She had graduated from Harvard Medical School at the top of her class and had been featured in medical journals for her groundbreaking research. What no one knew was that she was the daughter of Maria Santos, the waitress that Marcus had just humiliated. "Mom, what's wrong?" Sarah asked, still in her hospital scrubs, after finishing a 12-hour shift. Maria pointed toward table 12. "There's a baby over there who's been crying for almost an hour. The parents say he feels warm and hasn't been eating. The father refused to let me help and said some very cruel things." Sarah's eyes hardened as she looked toward Marcus and Elena. She recognized them immediately. They were patients at her hospital. Sarah walked over to table 12 with the confidence of someone who saved children's lives every day. "Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Sterling. I'm Dr. Santos from Mount Sinai. I believe you bring David to our pediatric clinic." Elena's mouth dropped open in recognition. "Dr. Santos? But how did you? What are you doing here?" Marcus looked confused, still not understanding the connection. "I'm here because my mother called me," Sarah said simply. "She noticed that your son might need medical attention." The word mother hit Marcus like a physical blow. He stared at Maria, then at Sarah, then back at Maria. The waitress he had insulted and humiliated was the mother of their baby's doctor, one of the most respected pediatricians in the city. Sarah gently examined baby David without even asking permission. Her trained hands felt his forehead, checked his breathing, and listened to his heartbeat with a stethoscope she always carried. "He has a fever of 102 degrees, she announced. "His lymph nodes are swollen, and his breathing is slightly labored. This baby needs immediate medical attention. He likely has a severe ear infection that could lead to complications if not treated tonight." Elena gasped and held David closer. "Is he going to be okay?" Sarah nodded reassuringly. "He'll be fine, but we need to get him to the hospital now. Ear infections in babies this young can be dangerous if left untreated. Your son could have suffered serious complications if this had gone on much longer." She looked directly at Marcus. "My mother potentially saved your child's life tonight." The reality hit Marcus like a truck. The woman he had called a nobody and insulted with racist comments was the mother of his son's doctor. The waitress he had claimed didn't know anything about babies had correctly identified a medical emergency that he and Elena had missed. His arrogance and prejudice had almost cost his child's health. Marcus's face turned pale as he realized the full extent of his mistake. Sarah continued, "My mother raised me as a single parent while working 3 jobs. She put herself through night school, then helped pay for my college and medical school by working double shifts at places like this. She taught me that intelligence and worth have nothing to do with the color of your skin or the uniform you wear. She also taught me to help people, even when they don't deserve it." Elena started crying, not from embarrassment, but from gratitude. "Dr. Santos, I'm so sorry. We didn't know. Thank you, and thank your mother for helping David." But Marcus was struggling with emotions he had never felt before. Shame, guilt, and the horrible realization that his prejudice had almost harmed his own child. "Mrs. Sterling," Sarah said kindly, "Let's get David to the hospital. I'll call ahead and have the emergency room ready for us." As Elena gathered their things, Sarah turned to her mother. "Mom, I'm proud of you for recognizing the signs and calling me. You probably prevented serious complications." Maria smiled through tears of pride. Her daughter had become everything she had dreamed of, despite all the obstacles they had faced. Marcus stood there speechless, watching as Dr. Santos prepared to save his son, the same son whose life had been endangered by Marcus's refusal to listen to her mother. The irony was devastating. He had spent his entire life believing that money and status made him superior to people like Maria. But when his child's life was at stake, it was Maria's wisdom and Sarah's expertise that mattered, not his billions. As they prepared to leave for the hospital, Marcus finally found his voice. "Dr. Santos, Maria, He struggled to form words. "I said terrible things tonight. Unforgivable things. I almost, because of my ignorance, David could have..." His voice broke. For the first time in his adult life, Marcus Sterling was crying in public. Sarah looked at him with a professional compassion she showed all parents in crisis. "Mr. Sterling, what matters now is getting David the treatment he needs. We can discuss everything else later." But Maria stepped forward, her dignity intact despite everything she had endured. "Mr. Sterling, I forgive you," she said quietly. "Not because you deserve it, but because holding on to anger would hurt me more than it would hurt you. My daughter and we choose love over hate." At the hospital, Dr. Sarah Santos worked through the night to treat baby David. The ear infection was severe, just as she had diagnosed. Without immediate treatment, it could have caused permanent hearing damage or spread to become a life-threatening brain infection. Elena never left David's side, constantly thanking both Sarah and Maria for their quick thinking and professional care. Marcus spent the night in the hospital waiting room, thinking about his life and his choices. He had built an empire worth billions, but he had also built walls of prejudice that almost cost him his son. He thought about Maria working double shifts to put her daughter through medical school. He thought about Sarah choosing to help him despite the cruel things he had said about her mother. When David was finally stable and sleeping peacefully, Marcus asked to speak with Maria privately. "I don't expect you to accept this," he said, "but I want to pay for any education your other family members might need. Scholarships, medical school, whatever. And I want to personally apologize to anyone who witnessed my behavior tonight." Maria studied his face carefully. She had learned to read people during years of serving customers. "Mr. Sterling," she said finally, "I don't want your money. What I want is for you to remember this night. Remember that the waitress you insulted saved your child's life. Remember that the black woman you looked down on raised a doctor who became your son's hero. And maybe, next time you meet someone different from you, you'll remember that we all have stories worth respecting." 3 months later, Marcus Sterling made headlines for different reasons. He had established the Maria Santos Foundation, providing full scholarships for children from low-income families to attend medical school. The foundation's first recipient was a young man whose mother worked as a janitor but dreamed of her son becoming a doctor. Marcus personally presented the scholarship, telling the media, "I learned that wisdom comes in all colors and all uniforms." Sarah Santos was promoted to Chief of Pediatrics at Mount Sinai, becoming the youngest person ever to hold that position. During her acceptance speech, she said, "My mother taught me that our job is not to judge people by their appearance, but to help them when they need us most. Whether you're a billionaire's baby or a homeless child, every patient deserves our best care." Maria continued working at Le Chateau, but now as head trainer for new servers. She taught them not just how to serve food, but how to serve people with dignity and respect. "Remember," she would tell them, "you never know who's watching or who might need your help. The person you serve today might change your life tomorrow." Baby David grew up healthy and strong. As he got older, Elena would tell him the story of the night a waitress saved his life. She made sure he understood that heroes come in all colors and work in all kinds of jobs. David learned to treat every person with respect, regardless of their position or appearance. The night that started with a billionaire's baby crying at a restaurant became a story that spread across social media and news outlets worldwide. It reminded people that prejudice is not just morally wrong, it's dangerously stupid. When we judge people by their appearance instead of their character, we might miss out on exactly the help we need most. Marcus Sterling never forgot the lesson he learned that night. The waitress he called a nobody had become one of the most important people in his life. And her daughter, the doctor he never would have trusted based on his prejudices, had saved his son's life with skill and compassion that money couldn't buy. Years later, when Marcus would tell this story to other business leaders, he would always end with the same words. I almost lost my son because I was too arrogant to listen to a waitress. I learned that wisdom doesn't wear expensive clothes, and heroes don't always look like what we expect. The most important lesson of my life came from a woman I tried to humiliate, and I will never forget her grace in forgiving someone who didn't deserve it. The story of the billionaire's baby who cried a lot at the restaurant became more than just a tale of medical emergency. It became a reminder that every person we meet has value, every job has dignity, and every act of service matters. Maria Santos proved that a mother's love and wisdom transcend social class, and her daughter Sarah proved that excellence and compassion can triumph over prejudice and ignorance. In the end, the most unthinkable thing wasn't what Sarah did to save baby David's life. It was how Marcus Sterling's prejudice almost prevented him from accepting the help his child desperately needed. But sometimes, the most beautiful stories come from the ugliest moments, when people choose love over hate, service over selfishness, and forgiveness over revenge.